Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we've got a very special guest with us over here. We've got Ali Khan, who is the former general manager of Caribbean Premier League franchise, the Jamaica Talawas, and today we'll be previewing both Groups 1 and 2 of the Super 12 stage in the ICC T20 World Cup, and we'll also talk a bit about the two opening games which start tomorrow, Australia versus South Africa and West Indies versus England, on this volume of
CRIQAZI Diaries.
Have a look at that, miles up. Oh, it's nearly taken someone out the stands. That was a flat six right under the stand there, the George Giffen stand, up into the members, and it went like a rocket. Well, wicket 24.
Welcome to the show, Ali. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. I know that you're in New York, so how's it going over there?
It's going good. The weather is turning now. It's getting a little colder. With the World Cup around the corner, obviously the World Cup starting tomorrow, the second phase of the World Cup. It's pretty exciting.
Absolutely, and we'll jump right into that. First, I want to talk about Group 1, and boy, oh boy, you've got 6 test-playing nations over here. Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, both have qualified, and they are both Asian sides, which are more potent in these conditions. And they meet 4 non-Asian sides in Australia, South Africa, West Indies, and England. So what's your take on this overall group, which I have dubbed the group from hell, straight from the depths of hell? Because honestly, I originally thought that West Indies and England would make it through to the semis, but all of a sudden now I don't know anymore.
It's an interesting dynamic, obviously, because all 6 teams are really good. Sri Lanka and Bangladesh are coming into this group. Sri Lanka is probably not been playing too well, but they look pretty good in the group games, and Bangladesh kind of scrapped through. And England are the champions in one-day cricket. So it's 6 teams that are extremely competitive. I would suspect that England's the best team in this group, but it's going to be really competitive with South Africa, Australia, and West Indies. And also West Indies obviously are the previous champs. So I think you're right. It is kind of like the group of death as we kind of attribute to in soccer. And I think every game is going to be really important in this game. And if Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are able to win a game here or there, it should really open the group up and make it really interesting.
Yeah, and I want to talk about both of those teams first up. I'll go with Sri Lanka first. And, for a couple of years or maybe a bit more than that, they've had a torrid run, especially in T20 internationals. But all of a sudden, they've brought out a bowling unit that looks like one of the contenders for best bowling unit thus far. At least, thus far, it definitely is the best bowling unit, but maybe even going forward, they've got an amazing kind of variety in this team. They've got world-class leg spinner Vanindu Hasaranga. Of course, Pakistan fans will remember him from that Sri Lankan tour of Pakistan when everyone was like, oh, Sri Lanka has a C team, and Hasaranga completely ran through our batsmen. So that, and then Mahesh Theekshana, he is a very brilliant right arm off spinner. He's only 21 years old. He's made an instant impact in international cricket. Even against South Africa on his debut, he won Sri Lanka that game and the ODI series, which was quite a marquee win. And then you've got the pace duo, express pace duo, mind you, of Lahiru Kumara and Chamira. So, taking a look at this bowling attack overall, I think that it could ruffle a lot of feathers, especially with those non-Asian playing teams. And the conditions suit Sri Lanka. So maybe you never know if their batting clicks, because that is a department where they lack in considerably. Apart from Chandimal, I don't think there's any experienced batsman over there. So do you think that they have an outside chance at making the semis?
It's possible. I don't really rate them as a team. I think you bring up a lot of good points in that. They have a lot of really good individual players. You look at Hasaranga, obviously. Theekshana was a really exciting young bowler, and they did well recently against South Africa. But if you look at the infrastructure of Sri Lanka over the last couple of years, they've been completely disorganized. Mm-hmm. A lot of their senior players have been disillusioned by the board. They've just been all over the place, really. But they do have a lot of this individual talent, as Pakistan saw when their so-called C team came to Pakistan. Raja Paksa, Fernando, all these different guys. They're really good players. And Dashun Shanaka actually, I think, has captained the side pretty well. And he himself is a really good player. And then they have this bowling attack. And I think the 2 spinners are really dangerous. They also have Dhananjaya who's in the squad as well. Mm-hmm. And he can bat too. But I think the player that's the most dangerous for them, apart from those 2 spinners, is Chamira. Because although Kumara is really talented, I remember when I was in Jamaica with the Talawas the second season, I wanted to get Kumara because I liked the fact that he was this pace bowler and we had Kumar Sangakkara on our team, and I thought that could help his development. But Chamira in particular is not only is he talented, but he's actually very good too. So, he knows how to use his pace. He takes wickets up top. And so I think they can be dangerous. I just don't see their batsmen, even though there's talent there, putting it together over the course of 5 games and winning enough to kind of get over the line. It's possible, but I doubt it.
Yeah, you brought a very valid point over there. I mean, I saw Chamira's bowling today, and the amount of carry he was getting was almost scary. And then he's complemented really well by Kumara as well. But yeah, I agree that the batting is not up to the mark, and they will need something special from the batters in order to proceed to the next round. And it won't be easy for them in the semi-finals. But I would still say they are outside contenders, because that spin duo of Hasaranga, who has an amazing googly. I don't think anyone's still been able to pick his googly. And then also Teekshana has the carom ball. And that's almost become a necessity for right arm off spinners, or even left arm off spinners these days. Imad Wasim, of course, has developed one as well. So I think that duo could do wonders for Sri Lanka. If not in this World T20, then definitely going into the future.
Definitely down the road. But Shishana, I think what he brings to the table is the fact that there's a novelty aspect to it, right? Where a lot of people have not faced him. We saw what he did against South Africa. I think that there's certainly, it takes, when you're playing someone for the first time, you're batting against someone for the first time, you only have 4 overs, right? And if you're struggling, it's almost hard to catch up. And that novelty factor can really help. Ajanta Mendes was one of those guys who came in and he just really dominated world cricket. Eventually, world cricket caught up to him. Shikshan is a little different. Obviously, none of us have seen enough of him to kind of have a full understanding of how good he is. He reminds me a little bit of Mujib. And obviously Mujib is one of the best in this format. So they're dangerous. I think their batsmen can win games for them. Like Kusal Pereira, we saw what he did. I know it's a different format. Single-handedly won a test match against South Africa in alien conditions. Their batsmen have that kind of potential. They may not be playing in IPL and all these leagues, but the talent is there. Rajapaksa won a game against Pakistan single-handedly in Lahore as well. So the talent is there. Maybe the structure, the organization, maybe the good fundamentals that you need, from maybe organizational perspective, maybe they don't have that, which is why the talent isn't shining through. But the individual talent is definitely there.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a talented squad, and they do have a rich cricketing heritage. So maybe that helps them, at least from a mental aspect, when you go into these big games. But anyway, let's move on to the other qualifying team. Bangladesh looked quite scrappy at the start of the tournament. They lost their warm-up to Ireland and then also lost that first game to Scotland. Then they had to win both of their games, and then they did manage to win those thanks to MVP performances from Shakib Al Hasan. Absolute belligerence, not only with the ball. Of course, he has overtaken, I think, Shahid Afridi now, or maybe he's level. I think now he's overtaken him as leading wicket taker in T20 World Cups. And then even with the bat, he's scored those crucial 40s. He's been the backbone of that batting lineup. But minus Shakib, I don't know much. Bangladesh might not be that good a squad without Shakib. Of course, they're missing Tamim, his experience, his expertise. And Mushfiqur Rahim is batting way down the order, which I don't understand, honestly. And they have a great left arm off spinner, Nasum Ahmed. I'm surprised he hasn't started yet. But also Mehdi Hassan. I think alongside Shakib, Mehdi Hassan might be that player who could hold the key for Bangladesh. Because again, very similarly to Sri Lanka, it's the spinners who can win them game over here. And Mustafizur Rahman hasn't had the best of T20 World Cups so far. He's gone for plenty thus far. I mean, he's taken wickets, but he's been quite expensive. So what's your overall take on Bangladesh? And do you think they have it in them to upset a few teams over here?
I do, because I think they're used to playing on these kind of, difficult spin tracks. Obviously, the tracks that you would suspect that they would be in good order, meaning the ICC is probably doing the best they can to make them good cricket tracks, but the IPL just happened there, so you can only imagine how much cricket has been played there. When I think about Bangladesh, the talent is there. I mean, you just talked about Mustafizur, Taskin Ahmed, who's a really good fast bowler, Shakib, the left arm spinner Nasum, and Mehdi. Those are 5 really good bowlers right there. So that's obviously 20 overs of really good bowling. The batting worries me, not because the talent isn't there. Liton Das, and we've seen all these guys perform really well. The issue for me is the way that they're performing right now, and I think that some of that has to do with what happened in Bangladesh recently, where they're playing on these really turgid wickets, just trying to grind out wins. That's not going to work. That may work, but that's generally not going to work against the better teams, where they can grind out those victories, because they're not the ones that are doctoring those pitches, right? So, the talent is there, as you saw with Shakib. He can, lift that country on his back like he has for 15 years, and he's going to give you good 4 overs and lead the team with the bat. I think the Mushfiqur thing is a little weird, because I think he's always done well. That number 4, number 5 position. Really, that number 4 position is the position that he's done really well in. Why he's not batting that, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's not even keeping wicket. Nurul Hassan is. So what exactly is Mushfiqur Rahim's role over here? I don't understand. Again, I would like to see him bat up the order, bat in those middle overs, rotate, strike, and then improvise. He does that really well as well. But Bangladesh, I think, yes, they do have it in them to beat a few of those sides on their day. But overall, I think they do have quite a few holes in this side. And you brought up a very, very valid point over there, that the notion that you presented, that the fact that they've been playing on these extremely difficult pitches at home, maybe that has impacted their batting and their hitting prowess, especially the ability of their batsmen to construct an innings. So I agree with you over there. Let's move on to the rest of the 4 teams. And since they face each other on the opening day of the T20 World Cup, the main event, that is the Super 12s, let's talk about South Africa versus Australia first. Now, I'm going to start with South Africa. Really surprised not to see Faf du Plessis in that squad, especially after the IPL that he had. And also Imran Tahir, he plays T20 cricket, franchise cricket, all across the year. He hasn't taken his retirement. So I don't know why they wouldn't go with that Shamsi Tahir combo. And if you didn't want to select Tahir, you could have gone with George Linda. He's been so good for South Africa recently. He is very, very good with his left arm off spin and is also quite handy with the bat. He can hit a 6 or 2. So I'm surprised at their selection. I think they messed up royally. But on the upside, Rassie van der Dusen, he is in belligerent form. He literally took Pakistan's bowlers apart, even though there was due, but scoring 100 odd in 51 deliveries, that takes some doing. So that is definitely in their favor. And then Tabraiz Shamsi, he was an injury scare, but now I'm hearing he'll be fit to play tomorrow. So I think South Africa hold a slight edge over Australia over here, who look like a team in disarray, honestly, given the fact that they've lost their last 5 T20 international series, which is honestly shocking for me to even utter those words out of my mouth. And then also, they were very, very abysmal versus West Indies and Bangladesh. Steve Smith and David Warner are completely out of touch. It doesn't seem like they have their starting 11 sorted out. And I don't know, I'm not getting good vibes off this Australian team. But of course, it's Australia. You can never count them out. But this is that one tournament that has eluded them. They've won the Test Mace. They have won the 50-over World Cup multiple times. And they've won the Champions Trophy. So there's a bit of that pressure over there on them as well. So what do you make of this game? Who do you think has the edge? And what's your assessment of both of these teams?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a lot of teams going into this World Cup that are in complete disarray, right? So even South Africa, if you look at everything that's happened politically in South Africa over the last year or so, I know it's a really boring conversation. They're having the hearings right now that are kind of, take flashback to all the way back to apartheid, and there's a lot of stuff that's going on. Australia just lost their chairman, who was removed. So there's a lot of controversy around Justin Langer's position as a coach. So there's a ton of disarray with both of those teams. If you look at their planning, you mentioned Faf du Plessis not being in this team and Imran Tahir not being in this team for South Africa. And I think that's a big miss, because if you look at some of the resources, historically South Africa has not had good spinners, but if you look at the players that they have now, Imran Tahir obviously at the end of his career, Maharaj, Shamsi, and Linda who's not on this team, really, really good players. I mean, and Linda, as you said, he's a really good number 7, number 8 batsman who can come in. It's really difficult. I think if you look at what's really exciting about this game really is the fast bowling attacks, because, Nortje, Rabada, and then Lungi Ngidi for South Africa. And then with Australia, Cummins and Stark are probably likely to play, but Hazelwood might as well with the success that he's had with Chennai. So really, on those pitches, which is, you would just suspect that spin would play a big role. It might be the battle of the fast bowlers. And obviously, you mentioned Rassie van der Dusen and everything that he's done. I think my one concern about South Africa, and I guess I don't know how popular it's going to be, is Temba Bavuma is obviously the captain of this team, but the style of play that, he hasn't really gotten the hang of T20 cricket, where he's striking at less than 110 sometimes, right? And that's really not good now. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think there's 2 kind of teams in disarray. I think this first game could be an indication of where both of them are going to go in this tournament.
I agree with you there with respect to Temba Bavuma. I don't think he's cut out for T20 cricket. But hey, I thought the same about Rizwan not too long ago, and look at him go. But very interesting point you also brought up is that this might be a battle between 2 bowling attacks, and the best bowling attack may win. And of course, Nortje and Rabada, one of the best opening bowling pairs going around. But these wickets might not be that suitable for fast bowling. Regardless, though, they have the quality, and Tabraiz Shamsi is the #1 T20 bowler in the world. And I think Shamsi is a better bowler than Zampa and Ashton Agar combined. So I think South Africa have the slight edge over there. But of course, this is a very, very important game for both of these teams because, as we've mentioned, there are teams in disarray. And a win over here could really set the tone for their tournament and could help them gain momentum.
I think the one X factor for Australia is always going to be their toughness, right? Collectively, as a country, they've been very tough in these kind of situations. South Africa in big World Cups and big matches, we've kind of seen them kind of melt in the past. Obviously that's in the past. Like, things can change now. But generally speaking, I would say, Australia is probably front runners to probably win that game tomorrow. But South Africa has players in their team, Van der Dussen, Mark Rum, and also Quinton de Kock, obviously. You can't forget about him. I think Temba Bavuma, the criticism, obviously he's the new captain in domestic T20 cricket in South Africa. He has struck it at 120 or above, which you can have one player that does that, but he has to then do that role, kind of like Rizwan has done for Pakistan. And then towards the end of the innings, we've seen Rizwan strike it at 130, 140, 150. So I don't know if he can do that, but if you can stabilize their batting and allow the other guys, Quinton de Kock and the others, to bat freely, then I think he'd be worth his weight in gold.
See, now, with respect to Australia's batting, I think there is only one guy over there who can single-handedly win that game, and that is Glenn Maxwell, because he's been in form, he's had a fantastic IPL, and I think he could be that sort of X factor for Australia who could just run away with the game. But other than that, I think South Africa have a bit more of a stable unit. Obviously, it also has a lot of holes in it, as we've been discussing. But I'm going to give South Africa the edge over there. I'm going to say they'll win this first encounter. Do you have any prediction?
I'm probably going to go with Australia. I think the one X factor I think from Australia will be Mitchell Marsh, because if you looked at those turgid pitches in Bangladesh where Australia was kind of rocked, he was the one guy who really shone. And him coming in at number 3, I think he's somebody that can make a difference for Australia. And I think Steve Smith on these wickets is going to be good, because even if he's striking at only a 120, 130, he's going to bring a lot of stability to their team.
Yeah, well, I hope those two guys catch some form, Steve Smith and David Warner, because they have been standout batsmen for Australia over the years. And Aaron Finch, the captain, has quite a dismal record in Asian conditions. He hasn't done too well. You can remember the last IPL he played. He was just abhorrent, for the lack of a better word, or maybe that is a very apt word. But anyway, moving on to the second fixture. Of course, this is one of those heavyweight fixtures, and we're lucky to have this on the very first day of the tournament. England versus West Indies. Now, West Indies are in a horrible run of form. They haven't won a lot of games in the recent past. They even lost that series to South Africa at home, lost their warm-up games as well. And I don't know, even though this is a great squad with a wonderful mix of youth and experience. Of course, you've got the experience of Chris Gayle, Dwayne Bravo, Karen Pollard, Lendl Simmons, and also like some very, very talented youngsters in Shimron Hetmeyer, Evan Lewis, and Nicholas Pooran. But if you look at their bowling attack, I think their fast bowling, those stocks are not quite up to the mark. I think they do lack a bit over there. And I think their bowling attack will be heavily reliant on Hayden Walsh Jr., who I think is a fantastic leg spinner. I think he's going to go places. And Akeal Hussain has replaced Fabian Allen. So their bowling is a bit suspect for me. I think they'll be relying heavily on those spinners. But other than that, they are, of course, 2-time champions. Both of their World Cup wins came in Asia, Sri Lanka and India, so you can't rule that out. And then, not having Sunil Narayan after he had quite a decent IPL, I don't know if that was a good move or not. But West Indies, overall, you'd never count them out. And they're facing England, a squad which is dominating white ball cricket, yes. But these conditions don't quite suit them. They're sluggish, and the way their team is structured, hitter after hitter, they might not have those sort of batsmen who can construct an innings. Of course, I'm not taking anything away from Jason Roy, Johnny Bairstow, Liam Livingston, even an out-of-form Owen Morgan. But I think that they might be one spinner short over here. They should have selected Liam Dawson or Matt Parkinson, in my opinion. And that might cost them, because if they rely heavily on Adil and Moeen, those guys can go for runs quite often, quite frequently. They can get you wickets, but they also go for runs. So that's an area of weakness for England that I've identified. But, honestly, even without Stokes and Archer, this is a star-studded squad. And even on these conditions, you'd back a team like England to make it to the semi-finals. So who do you think will have an edge in tomorrow's game?
But I think when you're facing up against West Indies, you never know, right? I think you make a lot of good points about the construction of both teams. With the West Indies, I didn't really like what they did with their selection. Obviously, Narayan, no one really knows why he's not in this team. It's really a moot point at this. But I think the way that they constructed their fast bowling, that didn't really make too much sense to me, because I think Sheldon Cottrell has been one of the best fast bowlers in the West Indies, especially in T20 for the last couple of years. He should have been in that team. I think Kesrick Williams is obviously unbiased. Kesrick has been on teams that I manage, and I really like him as a death bowler. Obed McCoy is very good. He's there. I actually think that Fabian Allen, obviously, it's hard to lose any player, but I think replacing Fabian with Akil actually might help them, because he's probably a better left-arm spinner than Fabian. And in this team, Fabian would probably bat 8-9. Very rarely would you get an opportunity to bat. So, that extra quality spinner might really help them. I think with West Indies, I think you have to go back to that semi-final that they played against India in 2016, where India, I think, were 190 for 2 in the first innings, and West Indies were able to chase that down. I think that's the X factor that they have. If Russell's healthy, Bravo, Pollard, down the order, they can really dominate. And then in the top, with Hetmeyer and Pooran, and I think the one miss, I know he's in the reserves, is Darren Bravo, because I've always liked Darren Bravo. In this format, he doesn't bat as quickly as the others, but he can if he wants to, and I think he adds a lot of vitality to that team. Obviously, that Ross and Chase has done really well too. So, look, I think they're dangerous with the bat. England, I think they're probably the most settled of all the teams. I think the big miss for them though is Joe Root. I think that you always need one player like that. I'm a big proponent of playing attacking cricket, fearless cricket, all that, right? I know those are huge buzzwords in today's cricket, but you need those guys. One or two guys in your team that can kind of protect those other guys. When things aren't going so well. And Joe Root is so outstanding. Literally against India this summer, he carried England's batting on their back. They had no one else of Test quality except maybe Johnny Bairstow. And he's a big miss. I think you're right about the spin department. I think Liam Dawson, someone like him, could have been really helpful. He also is a good batsman down the order. Obviously, Archer's a huge miss for them too. But I think England is ranked favorites, to get through and get to the semi-final. They've been really settled for a long time, especially with Morgan as the captain. I wouldn't put it past them to obviously get to the semi-final, if not the final.
Fair enough. And you brought up some more names over there that I had completely forgotten about. Of course, Andre Russell is in West Indies, and Joss Butler, actually, I completely forgot that he still plays for England. And of course, he is one of the best hitters going around in white ball cricket. I do think that England holds a slight edge over West Indies tomorrow, just given on recent form, because West Indies, I think, might need a bit of inspiration to get that sort of momentum, which will really get them going. And I agree with you, Sheldon Cottrell. I too like him as a bowler. I like him more than Kesrick Williams. And you know what? Even though Ravi Rampal had an amazing CPL, I'm not taking anything away from him. But to make it into an international team, it seems kind of far-fetched to me, honestly. But anyway, I will go with England ever so slightly. I think it's going to be a very closely contested game, and England will just edge out West Indies. But of course, I think that might just be the spark that West Indies need in order to galvanize themselves for the rest of the tournament.
Right. And we've seen West Indies in the past have some duds too. I mean, they've done really well in this tournament, won it twice. But sometimes they can start slowly, they can be sluggish. They have some older guys. They don't have the best movers in the field, so their out cricket is not going to be that good. The likes of Chris, others as well. But they have so much power that they can sometimes make up for that. The innings that Lendl Simmons played against India in the semi-final last time around, there's only certain players that can do that, and the West Indies have a lot of guys like that. I think Bravo is bowling. The other factor that I would say is, like, this is probably going to be the last time all these players are going to be playing together for the West Indies. That might be a factor as well. I think sometimes these things are overrated, but I think that's something to maybe think about. But in terms of preparation, in terms of kind of just being together in all formats, I think the England team, obviously, I think a little bit more solid, more reliable. But, with the West Indies, you never know.
Yeah, both teams seem to be of the sort which will outbat opposition. So that's why this makes this game in particular all the more interesting. And I agree that you need one or two anchors still in T20 cricket, especially in these conditions. I know all the talk is about, low price wickets. You just go out there and have a hit. But I don't think these conditions will favor that sort of cricket. And you will need a few batsmen who can carry their bat or just bat through an innings. And that's exactly why I think Joe Root is a miss, especially given the fact that he's one of the best players of spin in contemporary cricket. So yes, both squads do have a few weaknesses, but of course, their top drawer, I'm expecting a cracker of a game. And yeah, let's see what happens. Honestly, I am going with England slightly, but who knows? West Indies might edge it.
I think the one misconception about guys like Joe Root is that they're just kind of these like slow conventional players. I mean, I think he strikes around 130, 135, right? I mean, that's pretty decent. So his idea, and when you're that good, you can improve that, right? But obviously, like he's not been in their plans, and they've had so much talent ahead of him. Even guys like Liam Livingston, right? He just came into this team. Sam Billings is in this team. He's probably not going to play, but he's really good as well. So again, there's just like a ton of talent on both sides. It should be a fun game.
Yeah, and the one difference I'd say in their batting styles is that England also hit out, but they never compromise on the single. Whereas with West Indies, you see a lot of dot balls, but then they score more sixes than the opposition, and that's generally how they win games. In fact, I think Nicholas Pooran came out and said this, that we didn't get singles in 2016 either, and we won that tournament. So you never know. It's going to be one hell of a fixture, and I'm definitely looking forward to it more than the Australia-South Africa game. But I think we've spent enough time on Group 1. Let's come to Group 2. Now, first up, I think all four of Afghanistan, New Zealand, Pakistan, and India, they will have breathed a big sigh of relief over here that they did not get either of Bangladesh or Sri Lanka. Because even though you would back all of those teams to play better cricket than Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, maybe Afghanistan is level, but still they're Asian teams. And with Asian teams comes the risk of an upset. And I think the risk of an upset has been largely diminished with two associate nations coming through in the form of Scotland and Namibia, and taking nothing away from them, of course. They've played marvelous cricket to reach here. Scotland, in fact, they had only won a single game in ICC events prior to this tournament, and here they're on a run of 3. And if you count the previous game, they're on a run of 4. So definitely credit to them. And Namibia, of course, it's a historic achievement for them. Of course, who would have given them a shout, But honestly, David Visa, he's one of those cult figures, especially for PSL followers. I think he's almost single-handedly taken Namibia to the Super 12s. Both of those games that they won, he was the man of the match, and he kind of turned the game around and swung the pendulum towards Namibia. So I do think that these teams will compete, and I want them to do well, but I don't think they'll quite match up to the quality of the other 4 teams in this group. What's your take?
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's a fair point. I think there's always a room for surprise. I think we've seen Pakistan in the past, even India in 2007. Fall to Ireland, fall to Bangladesh, fall to other teams. Obviously, Bangladesh and those teams are at a different level now. But you never know, because some of these sides, the likes of Scotland and Namibia, they're professional teams, right? They're fighting really, really hard. And sometimes, if you have an off day and they have a really good day, you never know what can happen. I don't suspect that they're going to win many games. I think, but those 4 games between with New Zealand, India, Pakistan, and then Afghanistan, they're going to be super important, because even Afghanistan, I wouldn't consider them a minnow, because if you look at their bowling attack, it's as good, if not better, than any of the other teams. They have the best spin attack in this World Cup, so they can spur a surprise. The Pakistan, India, New Zealand, Pakistan versus New Zealand games, those are going to be the ones that decide what's going to happen in this group. I think obviously India is far and away the best team in this group, but Pakistan, we've seen in ICC tournaments in the past, find some, I hate the word form, but kind of get hot. I use the English terminology, kind of get hot at the right time, and kind of just go all the way. But it should be interesting. But I don't suspect Namibia and Scotland to do too much. I think they've run their race.
That's actually basketball terminology, isn't it? That they could get hot. Yes, I agree that, I think they will compete somewhat, but I don't see them going any further. Of course, Namibia is more so a one-man show with David Visa. And even though I like their skipper, Gerhard Erasmus, he's a proper bat, but he might not be like the perfect bat for these conditions against the big teams, because he's not one of those hard-hitting batsmen. He does need some time to get set. But Scotland, on the other hand, they have a few players who could prove to be quite fruitful. Of course, Chris Greaves single-handedly won them that game against Bangladesh. And leg spinning all-rounders are just so in demand. And honestly, I think they're like gold dust in today's cricket. Of course, Richie Berrington, very good against spin. And then also Josh Davey is having a really, really good T20 World Cup with the ball thus far. Anyway, let's go to the other teams. You mentioned Afghanistan's spin attack. I agree. Best spin attack in the T20 World Cup, for sure. Of course, Rashid Khan is arguably the best spinner in contemporary cricket, in white ball cricket at least. And then Mujib is also amazing, and he gives you another option different to Rashid Khan. He's an off spinner. And then Mohammad Nabi, you can't forget Nabi, right? All-round player, scores heavily with the bat, scores at a high strike rate, and gives you very, very economical 4-over spells, and is a wicket taker too. So if Afghanistan are to win any of their games, it has to be at the behest of their spin attack and Hazratullah Zazai, the Afghani Chris Gale. I just have to talk about this guy. I was wowed by him in the PSL. I actually had never seen him prior to the PSL. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, like the best batting talent in the PSL is Afghani. And I think that this guy, if he comes good, the opposition team is done and dusted on that day because they have the bowling attack to back it up. And of course, there are a few good batsmen in that team as well. And Asghar Stanikzai, or well, Asghar Afghan, mostly brings out the best in himself in these ICC events. And then Mohammad Nabi, as we alluded to earlier, is one of those features in that middle order. And he is always a very consistent performer, plays leagues all around the world. I agree Afghanistan is a dark horse, but I don't see them making it to the semis because I don't think they can deliver game in, game out. As for the other three teams, I think I agree with you. India is by far, the best team in this group. There's a big gulf between India and the rest. And New Zealand and Pakistan, honestly, it's a toss-up between the two because quality, I think New Zealand are not just one of those teams anymore who just are a strong unit of 11 cricketers who always push above their weight. They are a world-class 11 now. They have one of the best bowling attacks, all-round bowling attacks in this T20 World Cup. Of course, they'll have to decide who they want to play as seamers because you've got Rocky, you've got Saudi, you've got Bolt, then you've got all those all-rounders in Jameson, Neesham, Daryl Mitchell. And then you've got a lot of spinners who are now experienced in Santner and Ish Sodhi, and both of them have performed in Asian conditions before. My mind goes back to that group game versus India that they won in the 2016 World Cup. So I think they have quite a good composition of players. I do think they'll miss Ross Taylor. Of course, all of that experience, power hitting, decent player of spin. And generally, I think Ross Taylor is one of the most underrated cricketers in modern day cricket. But of course, Kane Williamson is, I think, alongside Joe Root, one of the best batsmen of spin bowling. I love his third man play. I think Kane Williamson's third man play is the only guy second to him is Babar Azam. And both of those guys milk runs over there. So let's hope Kane does not have that persisting elbow injury and he does play that game versus Pakistan. But yeah, New Zealand, I think, are competitors. You can't call them a dark horse. They're definitely competitors, as are Pakistan, because, Pakistan have had a massive shakeup very recently. You've got a new management, you've got a new chairman, and last-minute changes to the team. But this might be just the kind of chaos that Pakistan needs, because with Pakistan cricket, chaos breeds perfection. And, generally when the adversity gets high, Pakistan cricket brings out their best. Maybe I'm being delusional because they haven't had the best of preparations, but honestly, my gut feeling is telling me that Pakistan is a fair shout for one of the contenders in this T20 World Cup.
But one of the things that Pakistan has done when they've won these tournaments is that the team that starts the tournament is very different from the team that ends the tournament, right? If you look at 2009, the T20 World Cup, some of the players that were there at the end, Abdul Razak wasn't even on the original plane. He came later on when there was an injury with, I think, Yasser Arafat.
Yes.
If you look at the players that ended the tournament in the Champions Trophy, it started with Amish Shahzad, Wahab Raz. They took a hiding against India and were never to be seen from again. The next thing you know, Junaid Khan, Rahman Rais, some of these other guys.
Fakhar Zaman.
Fakhar Zaman obviously emerged. So whatever the plan is, you can throw that into the trash. You never know what's going to happen. But look, I think the chaos, in the past has been sometimes beneficial, sometimes not. You just never know. I think my biggest concern with Pakistan is that, as much as it is valuable to have anchors, I think to have four guys who start their innings so slowly, it could really, put them behind the eight ball, right? Again, we've seen against India in the past in these big ICC events, when Pakistan loses wickets at the top, their innings never get started. Most of the games that Pakistan has played against India over this last decade, they've been non-competitive. They've not been, forget close, they've been non-competitive, where we're halfway through, the game is over. Yeah, so, that's historically happened to Pakistan. I think the favorites for this group are New Zealand and India, of course, but, with Pakistan, you never know. I think, the talent is there. My problem is the guys that are huge difference makers are probably not going to play, right? I think Mohammad Wasim is a difference maker. I think Nawaz had the most sixes in the recent national T20. He's probably not going to play. And then Heather, for me, most people don't know this. I think his agent can verify it. But I saw Heather way back in 2018 on the tour to Sri Lanka with the under-19s. I remember calling Talha, who I knew really well, who's an agent for a lot of the big players in Pakistan, Babar, etc. And we're telling him, this guy Heather is going to be a superstar. He's going to be a big thing. And I remember, obviously, Talha signed him up, and he's been with him ever since. Heather should have already played a lot of matches for Pakistan. He should have already played Test cricket for Pakistan. That's how good he is. It's really disappointing that he's probably not going to play in this game. And I think Wasim is in the same boat. When I think about the best young players in Pakistan. I think about Abdullah Shafiq. I think about Haider. I think about Mohammad Wasim Jr. These guys, and then you already have Babar and Rizwan there. So those are going to be big misses. I think that the other thing to look out for with Pakistan is that historically we always say Pakistan's batting is not good enough, and Pakistan's batting always fails us. Against India, many times the bowling, specifically the fast bowlers, have failed Pakistan, right? Where they come out, they have so much nervous energy that they're super aggressive, and the likes of Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul and obviously Virat, who's done it so many times against Pakistan. So super relaxed. They come, they hit a bunch of boundaries. Pakistan has no plan B, and Pakistan lose the game. And so hopefully that doesn't happen this time. I think time will tell what's going to happen. But certainly for me, India and New Zealand, top of the group. New Zealand, to understand the kind of depth of talent that New Zealand have, Finn Allen is not on this team. Who's going to be a big superstar in international cricket. And another guy who's lesser known, but I think who's as good, is Ravindra Rachindra.
Ravin Rachindra.
Yeah, Ravindra Rachindra. Yeah, excellent two-way player, all-rounder, good left-hand spinner, power hitter, everything. He's a real full package. Obviously, they have other guys too. Mark Chapman was on my St. Lucia Stars team. Didn't do too well for the Stars, but really good player.
Of course, Devon Conway is over there, who's had a fantastic start to international cricket across formats. I agree that New Zealand have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to talent, but with Pakistan, contrary to what you've said, I think for the first time ever going into the tournament, they have a set starting 11. Seems like they've finalized their combination as a result of these two warm-up games. I am too disappointed that Haider and Nawaz weren't given a go in these warm-ups, because at least you should have given them some game time. But it's good to see Fakhar in such promising form. Everyone was very critical of Fakhar Zaman not too long ago, and all of a sudden he seems to be your most crucial batsman, especially in the top order with respect to strike rate. So there's that. And then I do think that even though Rizwan and Babar are a bit slow starters, but they do pick up their run rate, and they would walk into pretty much any team in the world. Maybe not India, but other teams I think they would walk into. And Rizwan is arguably one of the best keepers going around as well.
Sorry to interject, but the concern with Rizwan and Babar is not that they start slow. We're expecting that the runs that they've scored for the last year is, this is a different ballgame, right? The intensity, the pressure, it's going to be up to another level, right? This is not a random T20 match in South Africa. This is the big time. And if those guys get out early, it changes everything, right? We're used to them scoring, but there's going to come a time when they get out early. Then what? Fakhar has historically been an opener. He's historically batted with 0 wickets. He's going to come with one wicket. And I think the same problem that existed 2-3 years ago, or even has existed in all formats for Pakistan, is that specifically with Fakhar, there's so much pressure on him to be the power guy. You can't have one. If you look at India, Yadav, Pant, if Kishan plays, him, and even Kohli, obviously Rohit and KL Rahul, if they want to, they can strike at 180, 190. They can do that if they want to, right? And then you're right, Rizwan and Babar have shown an ability to strike at 140, 150. But, the thing is that historically they've not done that. And I think we've forgotten the value of averages in cricket. There's a reason someone has a certain average, right? They historically hit that average. They historically hit that strike rate. Every now and then players play beyond their level, but usually they don't, right? And we've seen that with the likes of Hafiz and Shoaib Malik, where their numbers in these ICC events have not been that great. And so having those X factor guys like Haider, who probably have no fear, who come in, maybe be super aggressive, maybe more of those guys sprinkled in with those other guys, those anchors, would be more valuable. But I think the deed is done now. All you can do is see what happens. But it's going to be exciting. Obviously, India-Pakistan happens so rarely now that I think the intensity is just so high in these matches.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I am optimistic with respect to the squad. Obviously, you brought up a lot of fair points about there being a lot of anchors in this team. But given Pakistan has played so much cricket, and it's been these same guys who played so much cricket in the UAE. They went up to number 1 in T20 cricket, playing their cricket in the UAE. And then, of course, after Babar and Rizwan, you have Fakhar, and then Hafiz and Malik, they can turn it up. They might be a little bit slow at the start, but they can definitely turn it up. My problem is Asif Ali. I've been a big critic of him. Of course, he's played 29 T20 Is now. 344 runs at an average of around 16. Doesn't cut it for me. Even his strike rate in international cricket hasn't been great. I know he had a good warm-up game versus South Africa, and I know he will start. I am sure of it. But that is just one area of concern for me. And then, maybe Nawaz should have deserved a spot ahead of Imad, but again, I think they're just going with experience. That's their psyche right now. And worst case scenario, if the starting 11 doesn't work out, then as you said earlier, Pakistan generally tend to figure out their best starting 11 in the middle of the tournament. So I hope they can do that as quickly as possible. But they're really up against it against India. The batting juggernaut is one to admire, be scared of. Honestly, it's intimidating going against KL Rahul, Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma. The fact that Shikhar Dhawan didn't even make the squad and still they look so strong. And Ishan Kishan, who's been so good in the IPL and even in the first warm-up, the fact that he might not even start, Surya Kumar might come in at 4. That really tells you about the depth of this Indian batting lineup. They probably have the best batting compared to all other teams almost combined. I know I'm really hyping them up right now, but that's really how good they are. And they're all clean strikers of the ball. When they want to turn it up, it's just a flip of a switch for them, seems like it. And then Jasprit Bumrah is one of the best exponent of the Yorkers in modern day cricket. You've got experienced spinners in Jadeja and Ashwin. One area, where I believe that India might lack is the leg spin department. Now, I do like Rahul Chahal, not taking anything away from him. But if I compare him to Yuzvendra Chahal, I think Chahal definitely takes the cake for me. And I'm really surprised not to see him in this squad because, according to me, in my opinion, Chahal was the second best leg spinner in world cricket after Rashid Khan, if you look at the past 3-4 years. So what's your take on that?
I actually like Chahal more. I think he's a little bit more dynamic than Chahal. I think, I just want to go back. You made the comment about Asif Ali. I think we look at T20 stats in a vacuum, right? We're trying to evaluate a full player, right? If you look at Asif Ali's first-class record, he averages 28. Mm-hmm. He's not really that means he doesn't have a good technique. He's not able to stay at the wicket for a long time. He's not able to play in different conditions and different environments. All he does is he has a really good eye. He's really strong and he can hit sixes, right?
But sorry to interject, you already have Hassan Ali for that. If you even play Nawaz instead of Asif, he could fulfill that role as well.
I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying that the way that we're looking at it is completely wrong, where he has an average of 28 in first-class cricket, right, which is much more competitive, harder bowl, more difficult bowling. That means that he himself is not that great of a batsman. He has one skill, which is to hit a six. And so, but that skill is limited, right? He's not like Shahid Afridi level, Abdul Razak, or what we've seen in the past with Pakistani players. And so, personally, I probably wouldn't have picked him, not that I don't like him. And then in terms of the one thing that we always kind of undervalue with India is their bowling. Their bowling attack is better than Pakistan's bowling attack. Mm-hmm. Bumrah, Bhuvneshwar Kumar, and Mohammad Shami are better than what Pakistan have. Not to say that Shaheen, Hassan, Haris, all these guys are not good. They're very good. They're very young though. And if you look at the rise of Indian cricket, it's been really on the back of these bowlers, their ability to take wickets and the way that they plan for games, the way that India won in Australia, the way that they dominated England, that comes down to not only the bowlers and their ability to execute plans, but Bharat Arun, who's the best bowling coach in the world. Most bowling coaches don't make a difference. Bharat Arun makes a huge difference, and he's transformed Indian cricket and the way that their bowlers execute their plans. Mm-hmm. I think that's where beating India is going to be really hard because their attack is relentless. Every single bowler that's going to be coming, they don't usually go for a lot of runs. And for a Pakistan team that historically has not only has not batted well, not that Pakistan doesn't have good batsmen because they do, but Pakistan's always struggled in this environment because of the pressure, right? Pakistan's always struggled with that pressure where India hasn't. On top of that, when India has such a good bowling attack, it makes it really hard. So I think this is a really good opportunity to see who in Pakistan's team has those, has guts. Because I think one of the things that we've seen over the years is that maybe Pakistani players are not as mentally tough. Who is that guy? Who is that guy for Pakistan who's going to be that mentally tough guy who's going to take the bull by the horns and win the game? I think one guy, I've historically not loved him, but Mohammad Hafiz has kind of transformed his game later on in his career, where he's gone from being a conventional batsman to kind of being this power hitter. Mm-hmm. And I like his attitude now. He doesn't care what, he'll say anything. I think that's really missing in Pakistan cricket. And I think he's someone who can change that. And in the Champions Trophy, he did. He played a great innings. Imad, I've worked with Imad. I think Imad I would always play him just because he can bowl in the first 6 overs. And he's a power hitter down the order. And he's improved his power hitting immensely. And so those are the two guys I'm looking at for Pakistan to really do something. And then also Rizwan, because I think Rizwan has that kind of toughness. He's a really tough guy. I think he's someone to look out for in this game against India.
I brought up a lot of points over there. Of course, Imad Wasim, his claim to fame was winning the CPL with the Jamaica Talawas. Were you part of that setup back then?
We picked Imad Wasim very high in the draft. In fact, the owner was like, why are we picking this guy? No one even knows who he is. And I think Ahmad was the man of the match in our final. So, and I think the thing that Ahmad does, which is invaluable in T20 cricket, he takes wickets with the new ball as a spinner.
Also, he improvises really well now. If you look at his hitting, it's a lot of improvisation, which is generally not a staple in Pakistan cricket. People will generally go for conventional strokes or hit down the ground, but this guy will bring out the lap sweeps and all of that stuff, the scoops and everything. So yeah, I think he does add value over there, definitely. And new ball bowling, especially in these conditions, he rose to number 1 in the rankings in these very conditions. I think when it comes to mental strength, I'd put Fakhar Zaman right up there, especially having done it before versus India, albeit in a different format. I think that does put him on an edge, or give him an edge, sorry. And then, you could only have played one of Fakhar or Haider because they're both top order batsmen. So I would slightly favor Fakhar right now, but of course I'm a big fan of Haider Ali. I think he has a lot of hitting prowess. He has a wonderful cover drive, a sight for sore eyes. So I definitely think he has a future. You talked about India's bowling attack, and yes, Bharat Arun really has done a great job, and the overseas success has only come after this bowling attack has sort of become this formidable. And you look at Shami, Bumrah and Bhuvneshwar, and the fact that not all three of these guys will play, you'd probably have Shardul Thakur in over there somewhere to bowl his cutters and everything. And he's been so successful for Chennai in the IPL as well. India definitely have an edge over here. They are favorites in this game. There is no doubt about that. And I don't even trust the law of averages with this particular fixture when it comes to the World Cup, because it's 12-0. So I have no hope of Pakistan winning this. But of course, do I think Pakistan is capable of beating India? Yes, for sure. They can defeat India. It's not like they can't. And I would give India about like a 60-40 advantage over here. But of course, my heart will always be with Pakistan. And, this might just be the time when they break that hoodoo.
I think the most important player is going to be Babar, actually. So, like I talked about Hafiz, so basically I said everyone is the most important player, but I think Babar is going to be important because he's the captain. He's the guy who's going to be facing Bumrah and Shami and all these guys at the top. What kind of tone does he send as the captain, right? Is he going to be positive? Is he going to be aggressive? Or is he not? And I think, obviously he has all the shots. And I think the reason that you have Shoaib Malik in that team, or Hafiz, or definitely Shoaib, is to protect and give freedom to those top order guys. So I would like to see them play with a little bit more freedom. I mean, Babar has improved, don't get me wrong, but this is a big game. Babar, if you think about Babar's career, the game that we remember is the game against New Zealand, but against India, this is a huge game. We need to set the course for Pakistan cricket for the next 10 years. Something was lost in 2007. I think that's where the script flipped between India and Pakistan. And India's dominated Pakistan ever since. This is an opportunity to kind of start changing that. And I think Babar is one opening the innings. Let's see how they lead Pakistan.
Yeah. I mean, I do have high expectations from this opening pair. Of course, they've been prolific with the bat. They are the two highest scorers in T20Is in 2021. In fact, Rizwan might go on to become the first batter to register 1,000 runs in a calendar year in T20I cricket. So there's always that. And of course, they're coming in with a lot of form. And you brought up a really good point that now they have that freedom to express themselves, because initially they were too afraid to maybe just go gung-ho right at the start, because they didn't have that confidence in the middle order, which I think now they will have. Babar Azam, of course, has been quite unequivocal in his support for Shoaib Malik. And now he finally has his man. So I am expecting good things from Pakistan. Even if they lose against India, I think they have a good shout to make the semi-finals. It will be a toss-up between Pakistan and New Zealand ultimately. But I am not losing hope in this squad. And generally, like you said, I just want them to go out there and be brave. You brought up a really, really valid point earlier that, the difference between India and Pakistan, skills aside, is that India generally treats this India-Pakistan game like just another game of cricket, whereas Pakistan really crumbles under pressure. They don't hold their nerve quite well. We've seen it in the past, and it happens every time in World Cups. So maybe this is the time to rewrite history. And given that this is the first game of the T20 World Cup, the pressure is obviously a little less, because you do have margin for error right now. And now you've gotten some easier teams in your group. So maybe that gives them confidence, and maybe they're hurting from all that has happened in Pakistan or to Pakistan cricket in the past month or so. So I hope they use that as motivation to galvanize themselves, push that extra bit harder in this T20 World Cup and do really well. And to beat this India team, they will have to bring out their A game, because nothing less will suffice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Pakistan has to play a really good game. India has to also play a slightly bad game like they did in the Champions Trophy a couple years ago. But I think the pressure actually is on Pakistan because, you would suspect India is going to beat those minnows. Pakistan will beat the minnows. Same with New Zealand. So only two of those three teams are going to come. The game, if you look back at the One Day World Cup, Pakistan really struggled to beat Afghanistan as well. And this is an even more condensed format. If Pakistan's under a ton of pressure, they could lose to Afghanistan as well. So that first two games is going to decide the World Cup for Pakistan, right? If they lose to India and then they lose to New Zealand, they're really chasing from that point on. Not only do they have to win, they have to hope someone loses. And that's, historically that's worked out for Pakistan, but in the last One Day World Cup, it didn't, right? So, this first game is important. Pakistan needs to put their best foot forward here, be really positive about how they do things. It's a little bittersweet because I think there's so many good players in Pakistan. This team could have looked so much better. I would also like to see Wasim in this team. But, obviously being Pakistani, of course, my best wishes are with Pakistan. I'm hoping that they do really well and hopefully beat India.
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed, and all we can really do is hope for the best. But I'm going to, at least as a fan, I've told myself to just enjoy this game and not take it to heart because it is the first game of the tournament. But like you said, Pakistan have got to win at least one out of those first two games. Otherwise, they'll always be chasing. And the amount of times that we've found ourselves, calculating run rates and depending on other teams for a result, it's happened so frequently for Pakistan. So I hope that's not the case this time. But anyway, before we end this video, quick prediction. I'm going with Pakistan, even though I have no faith. Let's do it. Let's win this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, definitely Pakistan. But my heart says Pakistan. My head says, obviously, there are other teams that are more prepared, more better. But
I was just talking about India versus Pakistan, not the whole tournament.
Yeah. Well, of course, Pakistan, but obviously history is against them. But let's see.
Yep. Well, that's a wrap for Volume 60. Thank you so much, Ali, for taking out the time and coming to my show. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you, and the insight that you've brought to the show, it's been very much appreciated. And I'm sure we'll do something soon enough. Yeah,
thank you, Bahram. I watch your show. I think you're doing a great job. I think this is a great platform for people to come on and talk about cricket, whether you're a former player, a journalist, whomever you may be. It's a great platform to talk about cricket, and I'm happy to have come on. Thank you for having me. Yeah. Technical difficulties aside.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your words of encouragement, and let's hope this goes somewhere. I'm putting in my 100%, so let's see where it goes. But anyway, guys, best of luck to Pakistan, of course, for that India versus Pakistan game. Best of luck to India, of course, as well. It is one of the best teams in the world right now and definitely firm favorites to lift this World T20. But anyway, I will catch you tomorrow once again after those games, Australia versus South Africa and West Indies versus England. That's all for now. Kazi off the mic.
Have a look at that. Miles up. Oh, it's nearly taken someone out in the stands. That was a flat six right under the stand there, the George Giffen stand, up into the members, and it went like a